never imagined that my life would take this course. After my husband's death, I closed myself to the world. I became a shadow of what I was, used to loneliness, empty and predictable routine. It didn't leave. I didn't know new people. I didn't feel anything but the weight of the days passing. But something inside me shouted, a need for change, to rediscover me. That's when I looked for Lucas, my nephew. He has always been free, intense, full of energy, a dancer of soul and body. I knew that if anyone could help me, it would be him. But I didn't expect for the bold proposal he made. You need to let go, Aunt. Let me guide you. The way he said that made me shiver. It was not just an innocent suggestion. There was something in his voice, in the way his eyes analyzed me. I should have refused, laughed, and said it was crazy. But instead, I felt a cold in my belly and accepted. He smiled. A smile from those who knew exactly what he was doing. He looked at me from head to head and said, tomorrow night, test room, no excuses. That night, as I looked at me in the mirror, something inside me said that invitation would change. Everything. The cold in the belly became a strange heat. I knew I was about to cross a line. I just had no idea how far I would. The next day I arrived at the rehearsal room with a fast heart. The atmosphere was intimate. Mirrors covering the walls, a soft light creating shadows that danced through space. Lucas was already there, leaning against the wall, watching my reflection as soon as I entered. One off. That's good, he said, with that smile that seemed to know more than he should. The song started, a slow, hot pace. He approached, and for the first time I felt the warmth of his body so close. His hands slid lightly through my arms before they landed at my waist. My instinct went to get away, but he squeezed lightly, firmly, holding me in place. Don't resist. Aunt, let the music take you. I tried to laugh to disguise, but my voice came out trembling. He noticed. It began to guide my movements, the bodies approaching and moving away from the beat. His perfume filled my senses, a mixture of something woody and provocative. You're hard, relax, he murmured, his mouth too close to my ear. I wanted to ignore that tension. I wanted to believe it was just a workout, but his gaze said something else. The way he guided me, the touches that took a little more than necessary. Everything seemed calculated, and I was letting it happen. Lucas turned. My body, my back now glued to his chest. The sound of his breath so close to my ear raised me whole. You feel that too, right? I closed my eyes. He knew exactly what he was talking about. I wanted to believe this was just a dance, but my body said something else. With each movement, Lucas pulled me a little closer. His touch was not just technical, it was intentional. His firm hands on my waist, guiding my hips, the heat that emanated from him. Everything was a silent provocation. So, very slowly, feel the rhythm, he whispered. And this time, I didn't have to look at. He was smiling. My eyes closed for a moment. My body began to react, the muscles relaxing, following the movement more fluidly. But then, I felt something different. A subtle slide of his fingertips on the exposed skin of my waist, the hot breath against my neck. My heart fired. I tried to walk away, but Lucas held my hand and pulled me back, spinning me with a precise movement. When I stopped, I was facing him. It was then that I realized. His gaze, it was not that of a nephew. It was intense, dangerous, as if waiting for something from me. What are you running from? He asked, his voice loaded with fun. The silence between us was filled with the sound of music and our rapid breathing. He lifted his hand and passed his thumb slowly in the corner of my mouth, as if erasing an invisible trace. You're flushed, Aunt. His voice sounded almost like a challenge. I should retreat, but for some reason I couldn't. My body was paralyzed, but my mind shouted. I should take a step back, impose a limit, remind myself who he was. But there was something in Luke's eyes that held me there. It was dangerous, wrong, but why could I not get away? The song still played, drowning the confusion inside me. I felt his warmth, his smell, the way his fingers slowly slid down my skin. My breath was rapid, and the worst, I knew he realized. My reason tried to take control. This is a game for him, I thought. He wants to see how far he can take me. But then, for a moment, I saw something different in his gaze, a trace of hesitation, almost as if testing its own limits as well. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I couldn't let myself be carried away. Not for him. So finally, I stepped back. The distance between us was small, but the impact was giant. The tension still vibrated in the air. Lucas said nothing, just watched me, as if I expected my next attitude. But I had no answer. The song ended, and with her, my excuse to continue there. I turned without looking back, feeling every part of my body still throbbing with that forbidden energy. I left the room feeling heavy breathing, the confused thoughts. Everything in me said to forget that, but the shiver on my skin denounced. I didn't want to forget, and something inside me said that it was far from over. In the following days, I tried to keep distance. I convinced myself that it meant nothing, that it was just a game in his head. And maybe, mine too. But Lucas didn't seem willing to let me forget. "Class tonight. Don't make me seek out forcibly," he warned casual as if nothing had happened. I was, maybe to prove myself that none of this was passing as imagination. But as soon as I entered the room, I realized it was wrong. This time, the touches seemed even bolder. His hands exploited my waist more firmly. His movements guided me with dangerous confidence. What was once just a workout now seemed a silent invitation. I felt something was different, but I didn't know what. That's when I heard. On the way out of class, I passed the corridor and saw Lucas leaning against the wall, laughing with a group of friends. My name escaped one of the conversations. "So, managed to make her break free?" My blood froze. "Relax," Lucas answered, his voice loaded with fun. This was already in the chat from the beginning. I felt a weight on my chest. So was it a bet? The pieces fitted. The way he teased me, the way he guided me, everything made sense now. I leaned on the wall for a moment, feeling a mixture of anger and humiliation climb through my chest. How could I be so naive? But what hurt more was not betrayal. It was the fact that for a moment, I wanted it to be real. The world around me seemed to spin, but not the way Lucas taught me in the dance. It was different. It was the feeling of having the floor torn under my feet. Every word I heard in that conversation resonated in my mind like a cruel echo. From the beginning, he played with me. My skin still carried the tracks of his touches. Every shiver I felt now seemed a blow. I wanted to scream, wanted to get into that room and throw it in his face, everything that was going on in my head. But at the same time, I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing what it had done to me. I swallowed hard and walked away, before someone saw me there. The legs looked weak, but I kept walking. I couldn't collapse at that moment. I got home and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were different. It wasn't just anger. It was disappointment, but not just with Lucas. Myself. Why did I believe? Why did I let him break the barrier I took years to build? I ran my hands over my arms, trying to push that feeling that still burned on my skin. I needed to think. I needed to decide what to do. I threw myself on the couch. I took a deep breath, but his image was still in my mind. The eyes, the touches, the words. Everything now looked like a lie, but something in me said I needed to face it head on. Pretending that it didn't happen was not an option. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to let it go. Lucas had no idea what he expected him. The next day, the anger still burned inside me. I spent hours thinking about what I would do, what I would say. I was no longer the same person who hesitated, not after what I heard. When I arrived at the rehearsal room, Lucas was already there, leaning against the mirror, as if nothing had happened. As soon as he saw me, he smiled. How could he act like that after all? I didn't give time to games. I crossed the space between us and stopped right in front of it. My hands were cold, but my voice came out firm. From the beginning, right? His expression changed. The smile decreased but did not disappear. He knew I had discovered. The anger tightened my chest. I hated the way he looked at me, as if he still had control of the situation. But at the same time, my body betrayed my mind. Why did you still feel that damn shiver just being near him? He sighed, running his hand on the back of his neck, as if he sought the right words. But I didn't want to hear excuses. I wanted to understand why. The bet was just an excuse, he said finally. I always wanted you. My heart fired. I should feel more angry. But what invaded me was something different, something I didn't want to admit. My fingers closed at the side of my body. I took a deep breath. Do you think this changes something? Lucas did not answer immediately. His eyes studied me, attentive to every detail of my expression, as if looking for a breach. But he already knew. I was still there, and that meant more than any answer. The silence between us seemed louder than any song we had already danced together. My body was tense, my mind a mess. I should leave. I should cut any bond that still existed. But my feet didn't move. Lucas kept watching me, the breath contained, waiting. He knew I had power at that moment, the power to end it, or to allow me to feel what, until then, I had denied. My anger was still there, burning, but under her there was something else, a dangerous spark. My fingers trembled when I crossed my arms. Do you think this changes something? My voice came out lower than I wanted. Lucas tilted his head, his eyes walking through my face as if he sought a silent answer. He did not answer immediately, and that annoyed me even more. I wanted him to say something, anything that gave me a reason to finally leave, but he stayed there, just looking at me, and then I understood. The choice was mine. It didn't matter what he said or failed to say. In the end, I always had the control. I took a deep breath. The air came in cold, but my skin was still burning. My mind shouted for me to go, but my body hesitated. What he aroused in me could not be ignored so easily. Lucas stepped ahead, and I felt my heart jump. I knew what I needed to do, but would it have the courage? I could feel the weight of choice about me. My body was still throbbing with the memory of his touches, with the confusion he aroused inside me. But at the same time, my mind was trying to pull me back to reality. Lucas was not a dream. He was a mistake. A mistake that somehow I didn't want to erase. My breathing was heavy when I finally stepped back. Not out of fear, not out of anger, but because I needed to be sure. I needed to know if that wish he provoked on me was real, or just a consequence of the game he created. My eyes found his last time before turning around. I felt the warmth of his presence still burning on my skin, but I forced myself to keep walking. Each step seemed a challenge. My body screamed to go back, to give in, to let the forbidden consume me at once, but I couldn't. Not without making him understand that this time the rules of the game had changed. When I reached the door, I stopped for a moment. The weight of the moment was almost suffocating. Lucas said nothing, but I felt. His gaze was still in me, waiting. Closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I could escape it forever. Pretend nothing happened. Pretend I didn't want to. Or I could face it. I left without looking back. But one thing I knew. It wasn't over. And deep down, I didn't want it to end.